Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 105. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here for this Monday Steelers Nation. Dave, did you catch your breath after a busy week of free agency last Monday through Friday? Things have calmed down at least a little bit. Still plenty to talk about here, but the weekend, a nice break from an unusually busy free agency period for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, just look kind of as expected what we said, right? You get to about the weekend there and it drops off, slows considerably there. What they call kind of, I guess, the second wave probably coming at the early part of this week, but that second wave probably isn't going to be anything like the first wave. And when you look at kind of the available free agents out there now at this point, there's a couple obviously street free agents mixed in there at this point with other teams cutting players. I would imagine that it's going to move fairly slow, and also teams probably keeping that compensatory formula in the back of their minds, some teams at least at this point. And then that's why several of these signings probably aren't going to happen until the Monday after the draft takes place, because that's when signings at that point moving forward of unrestricted free agents no longer count in the compensatory draft pick formula. If you remember back last year, the Ravens waited until I think it was the Monday or the Tuesday after the draft to make sure that Alejandro Villanueva didn't count in the compensatory draft pick formula and offset sheet there. Trying to say that real fast, but yeah, I mean, I think you're obviously going to see some signings this next week. I still wouldn't be surprised to see the Steelers add maybe one or two outside players at a budget cost, and I think we're still going to see a re-signing or two by the Steelers here potentially this week as well.
Yeah, still some holes on this roster to address. Starting strong safety, slot receiver, and maybe some other depth adds. All possible. What will happen with the Honey Badger? That's a big question. He's got some cryptic tweets that are sending Steelers Twitter into a frenzy. And so a lot to talk about here. Things have slowed down a bit, but they're still certainly ongoing. And they have a lot of movement with receivers over the last 48 hours. A lot to talk about with that position as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with JuJu, I guess, was one of them. You had Robert Woods, I think, traded for, was it a fifth round pick or sixth round?
Sixth round, yeah.
Sixth round pick, something like that. And JuJu, obviously, the bigger news. I kind of wondered, and if Friday, I think I said the other day when we were on the show, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out Friday what happens with JuJu, and we did indeed find out what happened with JuJu there. I guess technically, was he the second or the third? I mean, we had already talked about Ray McLeod signing with the San Francisco 49ers, but JuJu to the Chiefs on a 1-year deal that's up to $10.75 million. But the key phrasing there is up to, and man, when the details started to trickle out about this deal, definitely a prove it type deal for JuJu, because I think the base of this thing comes in around, I don't know, 3.5, 3.75, right somewhere around in there. You got a base salary for the minimum of what he's, his tenured time in the NFL is. The signing bonus, I don't even think was $2 million. He's got some workout bonus and roster per game roster bonuses up to a little over $500,000 that he can earn, and then the rest of that up to $10.75 million is incentives. So when they're more than likely not likely to be earned incentives as well too. So essentially a 1-year deal for him. And he's going to have a lot of work to do on his hands to maximize that thing.
Absolutely. So that's why we're always need to caution about the initial reporting of contracts, because they're very agent driven. They're the bloated kind of maximum level contract, and you want to get in the details. Devil's in the details in the NFL with these contracts, very rarely being fully guaranteed the way that you see in basketball or baseball, that we'll talk about one fully guaranteed contract here a little bit later in the show. I know one of those incentives for JuJu is he'll get $2 million if the Chiefs reach the AFC title game. That's according to PFT. So that's one example of them. I don't know what the other ones could include, but yeah, that was the thought with JuJu was, his market last year was pretty cool. I know there was a cap crunch, but he gets hurt this year, plays just 5 games, does come back for the wild card showing, but still had a pretty disappointing year because of the shoulder injury and surgery. So his market probably wasn't going to be a lot hotter this time around. And so that's why he's taken basically a very minimal 1-year prove-it deal that's, full of those incentives you talked about. So, I don't blame him for going to the Chiefs. It's not a surprise. Mentioned that on Friday's show. That's been rumored, for months now. Obviously, he almost, he had an offer from the Chiefs last year. Could have went to KC, the chance to play with Mahomes, Andy Reid, a chance to win. Going to get a better opportunity there than in Pittsburgh. I do know that, apparently according to JuJu's mom, and that is one side of the story, but according to her, the Steelers did not want him back, did not really show any interest in him coming back. So I'm not sure, what's exactly 100% true there or not, but that's some context to talk about as well. But again, not surprised to see JuJu the second time around sign with the Chiefs.
Yeah, and look, I know his mother kind of got, the social media world kind of up in arms, the way she kind of phrased things there with JuJu and the Steelers. And I don't know what you think about it. We have to take what she said, I guess, at face value, but you can also kind of read. I mean, it's not totally clear. I don't think she says something along the lines of Steelers, really didn't want him back. Are you reading at that as in they didn't make a good enough offer to get him back, or that they made no offer to get him back?
The impression seems to be the Steelers essentially made no offer, but it is always hard to learn about contract negotiations from an Instagram story. So I try not to read too much into that stuff in the first place.
Right. She might not. I mean, who knows if she knows? Maybe he says, well, they didn't offer me anything worth taking. Let's, I had a Twitter thread about that yesterday. Kind of wanted to give my thoughts on what I think more than likely happened. And I'm willing to bet I'm damn close on this, to be honest with you. And if you want to start, let's go back to a year ago, and JuJu signed what was essentially a 1-year, $8 million deal with the Steelers after reportedly getting up to offers with both the Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. And I think we can both agree, and I think most everybody listening to us would agree as well, Alex, that had the Steelers not used void years last year on deals, and specifically with JuJu's deal, there's no way that they would have done that deal with JuJu, because had it been a true 1-year, $8 million deal, his cap charge would have been $8 million. And the Steelers were in no shape from a cap perspective last year to do anything like that, nor were they and the same goes with several other players that they dealt with as well too, that they used the void years on. So that was essentially them, breaking the rules with the void years, but they had good reason to, and then also kind of breaking their own rules with technically giving a 1-year contract for more than, let's say, $3 million on a player, so he can kind of build his value back. I kind of view this as them making concessions, in a few different ways when it came to JuJu. I was a bit surprised he came back, and really, once again, he wouldn't have been back if they wouldn't have done the void year aspect of it, because there was no way they could stomach a 1-year, $8 million cap charge on him. Now, when you look at what JuJu signed with the Chiefs, and you think, man, couldn't the Steelers done something like that and given JuJu the same deal? I mean, yeah, technically they could have, but the Steelers don't, for some reason, they don't like to do those up to deals with any other, with a non-quarterback type player. Now, obviously, they just had this kind of incentive deal with Mitch Trubisky, and I think you can go back with some things with Ben Roethlisberger, and I think there being some incentives in some previous Ben Roethlisberger contracts as well too. But you will be hard pressed to find during the Kevin Colbert era many deals where there were up to or incentives, type not likely to be earned incentive stuffs. Now, they have had contracts on the roster before with that, but those have been contracts that they've had to acquire via trades. See,
Vance McDonald, I think, was one of those.
Right. Vance McDonald, Joe Schobert had, per game roster bonuses and whatnot in his deal. Obviously, he's now cut as well, too. And they'll do their best come restructure time if those things are on there to try to restructure them out if they can. So why don't the Steelers like to do, incentive deals with players, non-quarterbacks? I don't have a great answer for that. That's a question that I've always hoped over the years that Kevin Colbert would be asked, that he hasn't, but it would be nice to know for whatever reason, why that is. So, that's a starting point there.
Yeah. My guess, I think you've speculated about this before. You don't want kind of that pressure or potential tension between player and team about some incentive that needs to be reached at the end of the year. See Antonio Brown, for example, but many other examples of teams potentially playing games or players feeling like teams are playing games with somebody's money. If there's an incentive that's in range by the end of a year. So that might be the reason why. It's also probably just clearer for the Steelers, cap purposes. They know exactly where the players standing and not worried about some incentive that's going to kick in that they didn't think was going to kick in, or vice versa.
Right. Now, the other side of that is people say, well, couldn't they just done a 1-year deal or something like that for JuJu and along those lines? Well, here's the thing. They were not going to do a 1 year. Once again, if they do 1 year deals, those 1 year deals are usually $3 million or less. And most of the time it's the vet benefit type contract where it's a minimum salary and a minimum signing bonus, and it comes with a discounted cap hit. So on top of you'll see the Steelers probably do a couple more of those this year. There's not, those kind of deals don't use much cap space at all, and they are essentially 1 year, prove it deals for a minimum salary. And I think last year the minimum bonus with that was like 130, or the maximum bonus you can give for it to qualify, it was $137,500 if I'm not mistaken. But they just could they have given JuJu like a 1 year, let's say $3.5 million contract? Absolutely. But they weren't going to go over that, and they weren't going to put incentives in there to for the opportunity to go higher on that. Once again, I don't know. I don't know why they don't like to go that route, but it's just something that they don't do. My theory on this is they probably offered JuJu a 2 or 3 year contract, probably with an average yearly value of less than what he had last year, which of course was $8 million. And probably the only thing, it would have probably given JuJu a chance to earn, I don't know, $8.5–9 million total in 2021 when you add up base salary and signing bonus together. The only guaranteed part of that contract was probably going to be the signing bonus, which would have probably been around, I don't know, $7 million or so. They would have a cap number on something like that would have been, I don't know, 2.8, probably $3 million at most on that. But JuJu would have been tied up for 2 or 3 years in the process. And at a lower mark, obviously at a lower market value. I'm willing to bet JuJu looked at that and said, and I bet you look around the landscape of the NFL as well too. Any other offers that he got obviously weren't better than, or extremely better than the one he got. Now, sure, playing with Patrick Mahomes probably helped some in his decision to some degree. But if JuJu would have been able to make a considerable more amount of money, he would have played with you at quarterback, Alex. I'm pretty positive of that there. So, and once again, we're talking about a 1-year deal with the Chiefs. So I'm willing to bet the Steelers did offer him something, but it was a 2 to 3 year deal with a market value, probably less than the $8 million that he made last year. And JuJu looked at all of his offers and said, look, I'm just going to gamble I want to gamble on myself again. I have at least an opportunity with the Chiefs to make up to $10.75 million. I feel that I can reach all those incentives. And then on top of it, I'll have a good enough year where I can build back my market value. And back into free agency, I'll go in 2023. And then that's where I'll get my mega deal. He just was not, the Steelers weren't going to do a contract like that. I don't think we'll see, but I find it hard to imagine. And look, I don't blame JuJu for his decision, but on the flip side, I don't blame the Steelers for sticking to their guns the way they do business as well here. Either. So it sucks. I mean, everybody wished that JuJu would have been able to come back last year and rebuild his market value, but the shoulder, injury obviously grounded him for most of the season there. I thought it was great that he was able to come back, but sometimes these things just don't work out perfectly, and it didn't for JuJu, and it hurt his market value in the process. And then now that's why he's gone. But I find it hard to believe that the Steelers did not offer him something.
Right. And unfortunately, JuJu, in his first press conference with the Chiefs over the weekend, was not really asked too much about what happened with Pittsburgh. Did talk about why he decided to sign with the Chiefs and said, quote, I just thought this opportunity fit more for me in the sense of coming here and playing for Andy Reid and obviously the OC and everyone else, the OC being Eric Bieniemy, seeing the opportunity where I can prove my skills and see what I can do. Then reference, he came down to playing with Mahomes and catching passes from him, and that was obviously attractive. So I think the point that you made about, being able to have a good year in KC, not going to be the focal point of the offense, but should be used more vertically than what Pittsburgh was willing to use in the last 2 years. Should just have better production overall. That'll be the chance to really build his value. He'll still be young this time next year in the offseason, and then hopefully cash in 2023 because he's playing these 1-year games for the second straight season. Everyone wants that long-term deal with the big money. So, I think that was probably the big reason for JuJu going to KC. Obviously, from a fit standpoint, from a potential production standpoint, a quarterback standpoint, the Chiefs a whole lot better than where Pittsburgh's sitting at right now. I said, early in the offseason, JuJu came back last year, and he admitted this. This isn't me saying this. This is him saying this. He came back last year to play with Ben and play for Ike Hilliard, and both those guys are gone in Pittsburgh. So there was really, to me, much less of a reason for JuJu to come back for 2022 in Pittsburgh.
Unless the money was good,
unless the money was good,
right? Unless long-term deal. Once again, and we might never know this for sure, but I find it hard to believe that they did not. Now maybe what was it an insulting type offer to some degree, perhaps, but I didn't see other teams or it doesn't seem like other teams were beating down the door to give JuJu that $8.5, $9, $10 million over a long-term deal. And I'm not even sure JuJu would have taken a long-term deal unless it was more than $10 million per at this point. But I find it hard to believe that the Steelers did not offer him anything. The thing is, and it would have required JuJu to be locked up 2 or 3 years at a minimum and at a lower price, and then him not be able to do anything about it at that point. And look, people are going to look, when you see what JuJu's actual cap number winds up being with the Chiefs, is going to be extremely low. And just because he's a good kid and you root for him to maybe reach easy. In fact, his His cap number is $2.89 million, Alex.
Wow.
$2.89 million. He got a base salary of $1.035 million, a prorated bonus, which is really not pro rate, $1.455 million, per game roster bonus 510 up to 510,000, and a workout bonus of 250,000. It looks like the only guaranteed salary part is the base salary there in total, and that produces a $2.89 million cap number. And I know people will look at it and say, "Man, shame on the Steelers for not matching that," but it's just not how they do business with the up to aspect of it. And we'll see what more of these not likely to be earned incentives are with his contract as they trickle out over time. But that's the long and short of it when it comes to JuJu. And now he's no longer a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right. The bottom line now is Pittsburgh has a big void at the slot. They lose McLeod to the 49ers. They lose JuJu to the Chiefs. And there really isn't from a receiver aspect, a slot receiver on this team right now. So that's going to be, along with strong safety, to me, the top two immediate needs this team needs to address, and probably will address in some form or fashion with a veteran option prior to the draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, you've lost now, and part of the news, James White. We both had a feeling he was going to be gone, right?
Yeah, I don't think it was any Steeler fan that thought he was coming back.
Yeah, signed with the Dallas Cowboys. I haven't seen that contract yet, but that's going to be probably a cheap contract with them as well too. So you've lost 3 receivers from your team last year, and that your only real experienced guys at this point are obviously Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and I suppose you could throw Anthony Miller in that mix, but he played minimal snaps. Spent most of the season last year on the Steelers practice squad there, and really I think saw action one or maybe 2 games at the most.
And Cody White, I guess, played some snaps last year.
Yeah, to some degree. But if you're banking on Cody White to be a prominent member of your receiving core in 2023. I mean, in 2022, you might want to relook at that right now. So, 3 out the door. Are they monumental, huge losses for this team?
Not necessarily. Washington isn't. McLeod is not. JuJu certainly had the value of the third down, red zone, got to have a type moments. That was him. Pat Freiermuth, as he did last year, will kind of replace a good bulk of that, but you still want to have extra options and other people to fill that role. So JuJu is obviously the biggest loss of those 3. He's not irreplaceable, but I think he is definitely the hardest to replace, and just a unique skill set and body type that you don't find everywhere with that big, tough slot receiver. They're becoming more common, but still not as common as kind of the smaller, shiftier, quick twitch slot receiver that most people conventionally think of when they think about the inside receiver.
Right. And, someone, you could throw out and it'll get batted back in your face real quick, but to some degree, JuJu was, what was the leader of that wide receiver room, I would imagine. And some might say, well, if that was the leader, good riddance to him and all. But I think he gets a bad rap. I mean, yeah, you could do without some of the TikTok logo dancing type stuff. But, I mean, dollar for dollar, he's just a great kid. I think he just likes having fun, likes playing football, not afraid to build his brand, obviously, in social media. That obviously rubs a lot of the, I guess, older people wrong when it comes to that. But, I also think he was more than likely a good leader in that locker room as well, too. So, who's the leader in the locker room now, in the wide receiver room?
Yeah, there really isn't one. That's a conversation we had the other day. Someone will have to step up. We'll see what veteran they signed. I know you mentioned the thought of, what if they signed a Jarvis Landry, who would basically one-to-one fill that JuJu role, and also bring some much-needed veteran leadership to that locker room. I don't know what the odds of that are. I don't know exactly how to value his market value, but that's a name that would fit well.
Yeah, I think it would. And I think it. I would imagine at this point of his career, he's probably looking for something, a good way to kind of round things out there for his NFL career, because he is, kind of getting up there in age at this point, his market value. But once again, the Steelers aren't going to sign him on a 1-year deal, so they will be looking to get him on a 2 or 3-year deal with him. And a guy like him is going to probably be served in Pittsburgh more as a bridge guy that we know we can get 2022 out of him. Can we get possibly 2023, out of him as well too? I don't know how many people listen to this remember the Hard Knocks a few years ago with the Browns on it, but you want to talk about a leader in the room and a guy that comes off as a good guy as well too. I think that's Jarvis Landry, and I think he could help you kind of bridge that slot role because you're obviously going to probably draft one at this point. At that position there, can you get Jarvis to kind of bridge that position at least through 2022? I think so. I think it comes down to price and maybe what he's looking for. He might be looking for a 1-year deal as well too. And once again, if he is, he's not going to get that from the Steelers there. So if you look at the list, and look, he's a street free agent too, right? So that not that it matters when it comes to compensatory draft picks in the Steelers this year, but in case it winds up with something like that, he's not going to count in that category either. We've seen the Steelers kind of pluck some guys off the street in the past. Most recently, Miles Jack from the Jaguars there. I think it's an option. If the money was right, they're not going to pay $8 million per for him, I don't think. But if you could get a guy like him, I don't know, 2 years, $10 million total, $5 million yearly average value, and he make kind of the 10 or 11 million he was scheduled to make in 2022 before he's cut. Maybe you can do something there. But he is a name that I think is worth, at least talking about as a potential ad.
There are some rumors and reports that Landry now could actually go back to the Browns after requesting and getting his release from Cleveland, given the change in quarterback situation. So I don't know how true that is, but that's something to watch as well. Josh Carney mentioned Zach Pascal from the Colts as kind of another big body slot guy, much younger, should be cheaper as well. Thought that was a good suggestion by Josh to mention Pascal's name.
Yeah, is he the one that had a little bit of a drop issue too, though? I'm trying to remember. I do not know. I can look up his numbers on PFR and let you know some general drop situation. They have him down for 4 drops last year on 69 targets, 38 receptions. So not the best numbers, but I guess not the worst numbers either. Right. And I guess that wouldn't be, it would all come down to money. You're not going to break the bank for a guy like him. And once again, he would be kind of a bridge guy. So I would rank Landry obviously ahead of him. But look, there's not a great list out there right now, right?
Right. I was trying to go through a list of potential names and really didn't see a lot of even semi-attractive options. It's Landry, it's Pascal. And then I was kind of struggling from there. So obviously this team's going to draft a receiver, likely to do it on day 2, won't even rule out round 1 at this point. But you also think in typical Colbert fashion, they will bring in some sort of veteran presence just to give themselves some options and not feel quite as obligated to address the position in the draft.
Right, exactly. And look, at this point now, I wouldn't be shocked if they went 2 wide receivers in this draft, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know the draft capital is fairly limited, so that kind of reduces the odds, but you can't discount it with the second round pick, third round pick, and then also maybe one of those 7th round picks. You take another flyer on the position. So that's the book on JuJu. Wish him well in Kansas City. As you mentioned, James Washington going to Dallas, kind of back home for him, being from the Oklahoma. He played at Oklahoma State. Obviously, that was rumored by Des Bryant a couple, week or so ago that maybe Dallas would be an option, and Washington ultimately lands there. So again, no surprise. There was virtually no scenario in which Washington was going to return to the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2022, given his lack of play time and just general invisibility last season. So Washington, another guy on a 1-year deal, trying to rebuild his value for 2023.
Right. And it's sad he didn't work out, but just never was, had the kind of the twitchiness or the overall kind of deep speed to make it happen. And, once Claypool entered the picture, he never could get a good run of snaps and a good run on the field overall. Now, if there's anything positive with him moving forward, is the fact that he's a good contested ball catcher. He's got those big old lobster claws on there. But even so, he's really going to have a huge, real big season in Dallas, I think, to be able to continue his NFL career past next year,
Mm-hmm. I will miss your Washington lobster claws, lobster crackers references, though. They always made me laugh.
Right. Good, very productive guy coming out of Oklahoma State, and a lot of receptions there, a lot of targets, and a lot of huge big plays and a lot of contested catches. But when it's a lot different when playing in that conference than it is in playing in the NFL, right? And just never really able to stretch the field much and be that kind of that speedy Z receiver.
Mm-hmm. Dave, after the Steelers lost 3 receivers in essentially 24 hours, they have added a receiver to their roster. He'll be listed as a receiver, but really more of a specialist return man, coverage guy. I worked on the pronunciation after Friday's podcast, and it's a good thing. That man is Gunner Olszewski. I think I'm mostly right on the pronunciation there. I might be a little off on that. Someone can correct me. But Olszewski is basically how I'm going to say it here. The name we mentioned on Friday's show, and then he signed a 2-year deal with $4.2 million with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll talk to the media here on Monday. So he'll be a receiver, but really is not going to provide a lot of value as an actual offensive chess piece. Only 9 career receptions. His value will be in that McLeod role of being this team's presumably starting kick and punt returner. Also can offer something on other teams as a coverage guy and just playing more than just being a return man. So Olszewski, I thought a very good signing for much less, less than half of what McLeod got. So a great signing here by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Boy, good on you. You are on fire, right?
NBA Jam style. We got the flames shooting up from me. I'm doing 360 dunks and stuff. Yeah.
Another one right in the center of the bullseye there for you. And a good call on that one for sure. And I know a lot of people probably, when you threw that name out on Twitter, probably thought, what? Who? What? Oh, but I mean, if you know what he is and what he does, and we talked the other day on the podcast, right? Seems like Danny Smith's right for one present.
He gets 2 this year. He gets Killebrew back and Olszewski.
And off season there, and with Ray out the door, you get a more than comparable addition in a guy in Gunner there, and look, they need those kind of guys. They need someone that they can trust to return punts and return kickoffs. He's your guy. I don't think how much overall other special. I know he had 4, 5, 6
7 tackles last year. Yeah,
seven total tackles, special teams tackles. So one thing that Ray did not give you was the special teams play outside of the return aspect of it. So might you be able to use this Gunner on like punt coverage or kick coverage team? I think it's possible. I really do there. And it goes without saying that man, it sure would be nice to see a Steelers punter kick returner take one to a house in the game, right? And he, I think, has done that. Has he not? And he's had some impressive games. I think you go back a couple, maybe it was last year, to the game against the Chargers there. I think he had 4 punt returns, all over 20 yards, and kick return for like 26 yards as well too. So I bet Danny Smith is happy to have him on board there, and good call by you.
Thank you. Yeah, for a good price as well. He's 25 years old, and I know it's not a name that a lot of people know, but he was an All-Pro in 2020, so I didn't exactly pick the most obscure name out there, someone that's a literal All-Pro candidate after I think he led the league in punt return average 2 years ago. He's been their kick and punt returner for, I think, the last 3 years, regarded as a really tough guy. I think the biggest thing for return men, I know people talk about speed and quickness and the juke ability and stuff like that. To me, the two most important traits for return guys are toughness and ball security. Ball security is important for anyone touching the football. You don't want to turn the ball over, lose possessions deep in your own territory. That much is obvious, but you got to have the toughness as well to run full speed into a group of 11 people running full speed at you, all with the mission of taking you out and hitting you as hard as they can. And the book on Olszewski, and Jonathan did a good job with his film and breakdown on him over the weekend, is that he's a really tough player and physical and fearless. And that's a really key trait to me, the starting point of any good return man. And so different style of play than McLeod, different role in terms of not being the receiver that McLeod quasi was used last season, but will offer more on other units on the team's unit while being this team's kick and punt returner, 25, 26 years old, productive. And again, cheap. McLeod gets $10 million. I don't know, what the structure of that is. It's probably some incentives and bloated parts of that contract, but, Gunner signs for 4.2. I think maybe you get arguably a better player for, 50% of the money. That's a really good contract.
Absolutely. And he looked every bit, he looks like a gunner, does he not?
Yeah, the photos you showed, yeah, just they're funny.
He certainly does look the part. So key special teams addition for this team, and a very limited play, I think, on offense. He did have, I think, a slot touchdown in one of those. So I don't know how much, he's that Arnaz Battle, right? Break glass in case of emergency type wide receiver there. So I don't think you're going to get a lot of them, as far as offensive production goes. But he is a guy on your team that can wear a lot of hats for you, with obviously being a return man, being the primary one that he'll wear.
He did have that touchdown that also came against the Chargers as well. Like, had a great game. They blew out the Chargers. It was like 41-0 or something. He had the punt return touchdown, receiving touchdown. So maybe he can offer something there. Maybe he just wasn't asked to do it much in New England. I'm not quite sure, but he's here primarily as that special teams guy. And again, this certainly does not prevent and should not and will not prevent this team from addressing a slot receiver both in free agency and certainly in the draft. So, Olszewski's here to be that return man. And like I said, a good one at that.
Right.
By the way, I should mention a very busy pro day week coming up here. A lot of quarterbacks throwing this week. Kenny Pickett and Pitt's pro day is today. Malik Willis, Liberty tomorrow. Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral have them later in the week. Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert as expected at Pitt's pro day today. And so those guys will work out a little bit later. Actually, by the time you're listening to this, they're probably already going through or have completed their Monday pro day workout. So that is the pro day watch there. Tomlin, Colbert at Pitt today to watch. Number one, Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, Matt Canada there as well too. Boy, okay. Yeah, long. Wonder what that flight was like. Probably flight of stairs when it comes to that. So not a bit surprising there. I think what will it'll be more telling what happens in these next coming days. I think we both expect them to be at the Liberty Pro Day, which I believe is tomorrow, and then we'll see if they go see Ritter and who was the other one?
Corral, I believe, is later this week. Right. I want to say,
and then I think the UNC, the North Carolina Pro Day is on down the line a little bit there. So going to be a busy week for them after obviously a busy week last week going to Clemson, Georgia, and Michigan.
And very classy by Clemson to have that jersey for Kevin Colbert. That was a very nice gesture. If you haven't seen the post, check it out on Steelers Depot. Just look at Clemson's Twitter page, honoring Colbert with a 22 jersey framed for his 22 years of being GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So a very close relationship between Dabo Swinney, the Tigers program, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was I've never seen a GM honored before at a pro day before. So that was really cool.
Right, it really was cool, and Kevin Colbert's been to quite a few Clemson pro days over the years, has he not? So that was a nice gesture by them.
Yeah, since 2017, they've been there for all but one. I think 2018 they did not go because they were at Oklahoma State that day when they obviously drafted Rudolph in Washington. So they even went in 2020. That was the one stop they made in 2020 before the pandemic shut things down. So they've been at Clemson almost every single season. All right, Dave, another piece of news here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They interviewed 13 GM candidates heading into this week, and now they're up to 16. So they've interviewed, I think you're next, Dave. They've interviewed every single person they possibly
I think you're next.
Yeah, maybe I am, and I don't even know it. I'm on retainer. They've interviewed now 3 more candidates. The team announced over the weekend they have interviewed all former GMs, Jerry Reese, Rick Spielman, and Doug Whaley. And Doug Whaley's probably the most familiar sounding name to Steelers fans right now. He worked with Pittsburgh for about 10 years before leaving to go to Buffalo, eventually becoming the GM there. Also as part of the XFL most recently. Spielman was with Minnesota, got fired this past year along with Mike Zimmer. So almost had a deal with Jacksonville to work with them, but that deal apparently fell through. And Jerry Reese was the Giants GM for, I think, at least 10 years and won 2 Super Bowls with Eli Manning. So those were the, prior to those 3, every single GM candidate interviewed had not had GM experience before. And so now Pittsburgh's interviewing 3 guys who have been former GMs, also none of them with teams, none of them under contract, which meant there was no worry about teams being able to block GM interviews, which is a rule that took place starting March 1st. And so I think it's good to see them at least interview guys who have been GMs before. It's smart to do it now than as opposed to prior to March 1st. So, all makes a lot of sense.
Alex, you watch all these shows or whatnot. At what time do they, how does do they start giving out the roses pretty soon or giving people roses? Or
they're getting like a Bachelor cast of people. I've stopped watching The Bachelor, honestly. I swear to God. I got really bored with it. I have not watched it in several seasons, have not followed it. So I'm actually out of touch in my Bachelor news. They moved the date and my TV is kind of semi-broken at my office. And I just went, I kind of stopped caring, but I'll play along and say, yeah, they're on the first date right now. They're doing the, can I steal you for a second? And, they'll do the rose ceremony after the draft.
Can I steal you for a second?
That's what they say on the show, on The Bachelor.
Do you have a favorite season of The Bachelor?
I've truthfully only watched a couple seasons, maybe 3, maybe 4. Colton's season was pretty good. But why am I telling you this? Becca's season was pretty good. I don't know. I've only watched a couple, though.
Who's been your favorite Bachelor? Do you have a favorite girl that's been on the show?
Becca was pretty good.
Who?
I'm answering Becca. You don't even know who this person is.
No
one knows who this is. Everyone ask your wife who this person is.
My wife doesn't even watch that stuff, believe it or not.
Really? All right. Yeah. Well, now I feel worse.
Okay.
Anyway, back to the GM search here. So yeah, Spielman, Reese, Whaley.
We need to get you on The Bachelor is what we need to do, don't we?
I think I'm a little short. These guys I'm jealous. They're all like 6'4", ripped. I don't think I qualify. Anyway, Rick Spielman. I mentioned Rick Spielman back in January as a potential option after he got fired by Minnesota. And because of the connections there with Colbert and Tomlin, Spielman was with Minnesota in 2006 and Mike Tomlin's 1 year with the Vikings as DC. And actually Spielman worked under Kevin Colbert in Detroit as a pro scout. Whenever Colbert was part of the, pro personnel or player personnel department. And Chris Spielman also played for the Lions in the 90s as well. And so there were some connections there that probably helped get your foot in the door. So I'm not surprised to see Spielman on that list of candidates.
Yeah, I tell you who I don't want to see get the job on that list is Doug Whaley.
Yeah, his time in Buffalo did not end well.
And, I obviously got some links back to some time in Pittsburgh there. But it feels like a lot of these are courtesy interviews for the most part. I have a feeling that, you're still probably in the same camp that I am. That, I'll be shocked if it's not Brandon Hunt or Omar Khan.
Yeah, I still view Hunt as the quote unquote front runner, but anytime you interview, 14 other outside candidates, you certainly could go outside. And would they want someone with experience? I think Spielman would make sense there. Whaley, maybe less so, but he is a known guy that Tomlin knows, this organization knows, and there's going to be some value and intrigue there. So I really am not going to rule anybody out, but I still view Hunt as the favorite.
Okay.
I will say it's a pretty wild offseason for whoever the next GM is to step into. Just with a very aggressive free agency and whatever the draft holds. So it'll be very unusual there, to see that GM come in just after the draft in general, which is unusual to happen, not unheard of. Doug Whaley got fired after the draft in Buffalo, for whatever that's worth. But after an offseason where you've seen so much turnover and so much change in one offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
So 16 candidates so far. Maybe that'll be it. I'm guessing that'll be the list. And then Colbert said they'll have second interviews and finalists after the draft, where Tomlin will get involved. And so a hire should be made, I would guess, the first or second week of May.
All right. Well, that's what we'll start looking forward to.
All right, Dave, go back to the draft here. I had my second Steelers mock draft go up this morning on Steelers Depot. We can run through things fairly quickly here. At number 20 overall in the first round, I am going a quarterback, Malik Willis from Liberty. Now, I do want to throw out there and qualify. I don't think Willis will actually fall to number 20 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they will have to trade up for him. If they want him, he will go somewhere in the top 19 picks. But at this point, given the more aggressive moves in free agency, really shoring up an offensive line, improving an inside linebacker, getting corner depth, et cetera, certainly puts you in position to be aggressive to go get a quarterback. There's a real need there. Willis is that dynamic, high upside guy. There's a risk there. Absolutely. There's a risk on any quarterback, any player that you take, but you want to bet on somebody, bet big, go for the home run, bet on traits, and Willis has them.
And, that's where my head's been at, right, for a while now. I just have got I just have a feeling that they're ramping up to try to get Willis specifically. I've said numerous times I'm buying all that smoke that's been around Willis, especially dating back to the Senior Bowl. Assuming that they have Sullivan and Canada and Tomlin and Colbert at the Liberty Pro Day this week. And they're obviously going to probably go see the other quarterbacks too, because even in past years, Kevin Colbert understands the value of doing all the top quarterbacks to make sure you have the process right. So I would expect, now it'll be really telling if they go see Willis and they don't turn around and go see Ritter and Matt Corral there. But I really think they have their eye on Willis. And as we've said, or at least I've said several times, this is a guy that, any team that drafts Malik Willis this year better do so with the idea of not playing him in 2022. He has the highest ceiling, I believe, of all the quarterbacks in this year's draft class, but you got to nurture that ceiling and bring it along slowly here. That's yet another reason, is that and along with the quarterback movement that we've seen this year. Yeah, I know you qualified it. I know you're gonna probably got a lot of pushback in the comments here. He's not gonna be there. He's not gonna be there. Well, same old crap we hear every year. Whenever you put mock drafts together, there's 4 or 5 people with a pick or two that say he's not going to be there. I don't, I wouldn't bet my house that he's not there. How's that? Because of just, he's not going to be a guy that I think teams can play right away. And when you look at kind of the, what's happening in the first 19 picks and some of the quarterback movement, I really think, and I think it was Tyler Wise that pointed this out on Twitter this past week, the Panthers, now that they're still kind of looking for their quarterback in the future, I have a feeling they are all in on Kenny Pickett. And I think you can draw a kind of a link from Matt Rule back to Temple, where I think they even brought had Pickett in for a visit, and probably thought that they were going to add him to Temple at one time. So I think there's some and then obviously the Panthers GM has the ties to Pittsburgh. There's a lot of smoke, I think, around Pickett to the Panthers, to think that could possibly happen there. And if that happened, if he's the first if indeed he's the first quarterback off the board, which I think there's a good chance of that happening, then I guess the question becomes is how far does Willis fall from that point?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. The draft is full of surprises, but in this quarterback-starved world, there's only one quarterback go in the top 19. I just have a hard time buying that for a guy like Willis, with clearly the most upside and overall talent in this class. It's just hard to see that guy lasting all the way to 20.
And if they moved up from 20, how far would they have to move up? Obviously the fewer the spots the less it's going to cost. But at a minimum, you could potentially see this costing the Steelers obviously their first round draft pick in 2022, probably their first round draft pick in 2023, and I don't know, maybe a second round pick in 2024. I don't know, but once again, it goes back to people say, well, that's too much. Well, if you think this is your guy, and if you think this is the guy that you can get to reach his upside and thus become a quarterback for the next 10 years, then
there's no such thing as too much. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter what you give up there. So what has finally, just because of the way they are in free agency this year and knowing that Mitch Trubisky is essentially that guy that'll at least get you through 2022, is just a culmination of everything that's led to you settling on Willis now? And how hard, I guess, will it be for you to move Willis out of this spot now that you have him in this spot?
Well, to answer that second question, let's just see what happens at tomorrow's pro day at Liberty. I'm going to assume that one or both, likely both, of Tomlin and Colbert will be there. I'm not quite as sure about the rest of the group, Canada, Sullivan. I'm not even sure if Sullivan's at Pitt today. I don't know if we have that confirmed or not. Canada will probably be at Liberty tomorrow if they take Tomlin and Colbert, but I want to check that box first. But if they're not there for some reason, then that really would throw a monkey wrench into the whole thought process.
If they're not there, it'll be a shock. If those three are not at Liberty, it'll be a shock. And I bet if we look hard enough, we will find Mike Sullivan at the Pitt Pro Day today, unless he's out somewhere else, and at the Liberty Pro Day.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever it's worth, in Jim Nagy's tweet that rattled off the list of teams that are there based on their OC, quarterback, GM, he does not have the Steelers listed as the quarterback. He has the quarterback coaches for each team listed there, and the Steelers are not one of them. Did he just miss them? I'm not sure, but whatever that's worth, we'll certainly check it later. Again, I expect him to be at Liberty tomorrow, but I do want to check that box before we take that extra step. It's the culmination of free agency. I mean, obviously, quarterback was in play. Could have put them in my first mock draft, and no one would have batted an eye. I mean, quarterback is the biggest need, but just knowing that you have Trubisky, you have Rudolph, there is not going to be this imperative or this urgency to play Willis, even if someone got hurt, Trubisky or Rudolph, you'd have the other guy. So you're protected pretty well in that way to really make sure Willis gets a year to kind of sit and learn.
And Matt Rule is at the Pitt Pro Day today.
Right, so no surprise there. Also, others considered on my first round list were cornerback Andrew Booth, strong safety Lewis Sine, the other quarterbacks Kenny Pickett. I also do not want to discount Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati either, and Jordan Davis. I do not think Davis will be there at 20. Should mention I did my report on Davis over the weekend. Just a little piece of information I discovered. Eddie Faulkner recruited Jordan Davis to NC State when Faulkner was the recruiting coordinator there. Davis, a Carolina kid, and so Eddie Faulkner has kind of always maybe had his eye on Big Jordan Davis before he became the talk of the NFL draft world.
There you go.
Second round, speaking of Georgia, second round here for Pittsburgh in my mock draft, George Pickens, number 52 overall, selected in my second mock draft in the second round. Easy connections there, given their pro day interest. Frisman Jackson working him out. He's tough. He's physical, a great blocker, recovered from that torn ACL, tested well overall. Power 5 guy. There is a question about where he fits. He's kind of more of an outside receiver, has played some in the slot, but viewed more of an outside kind of a guy, and his team really needs more of a slot receiver right now, but just the dots were too easy for me to connect here. I think round 2, round 3 are going to be your sweet spots for this team to take a receiver.
Yeah, I view him more as a Z type guy, but as I've talked several times since last season, this team needs somebody that can stretch the field. And I'm at the point now, based on, I'm not going to be shocked that this team adds both a Z and a Y slot this season, this draft, and it would not hurt my feelings if Pickens, and I think Pickens comes off as a real kind of a cleaner character kid as well too, for the most part, from what I understand.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not aware of any sort of off the field issues with him. Generally, Pittsburgh stays away from guys with some of those character red flags. So again, this one makes a lot of sense here. You could really probably almost write in pen a receiver at some point on day 2. You could also mention Sky Moore. You could mention Justin Ross from Clemson. Probably some other names we'll put on the list here. before draft season is done and over with. So Pickens the pick in round 2. Round 3.
Here's the only pushback I would give you on that is you look at past wide receivers and their production and the 100 reception mark, right? He hasn't hit that yet.
Partially because of the injury, but
right?
Point taken for sure.
Right. And if there would be any pushback whatsoever, I mean, he's got some fantastic catches on tape, and his blocking, he's a bully of a blocker, something that will sit in good with the Steelers as well too. But if there was going to be some pushback from me with him, it would be just 90 catches with him and just 24 total collegiate games overall. That would be the pushback on him.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I totally get that. But they were at his pro day workout. They worked him out. So that kind of was enough for me to overcome that, I think, very fair critique that you're making there.
Is there a chance that guy goes a round or two later?
I think there's always a chance with these receivers because there are so many. And when they get bunched up, I mean, they can kind of just fall a little bit more than people think. But I kind of view him as a pretty strong second-round guy. I think Justin Ross is someone viewed as a second-round guy that's going to fall into day 3 because of the testing, because of some of the medical concerns that he has that are maybe some more outstanding questions.
Right.
Round 3, going here with another safety from Maryland. Pittsburgh's dipped into those waters quite a bit in the past with Sean Davis, Antoine Brooks. But here I'm taking Nick Cross, who had a great pre-draft workout. The RAS score, as you like to talk about, Pittsburgh likes their Sparky, or I don't know, how do you say it? Rassi?
Rassi? I don't know. We're going to have to come up with something new for that.
Sparky definitely sounded better, but Cross with a 991 relative athletic score, 4.3, 440, 37-inch vertical, 10.10 broad. That's better than Edmonds, Davis, Troy, Minka. The Pittsburgh journey likes their safeties when they draft them, and at least are successful drafting them, to be pretty athletic. He has some ball skills, picked off 3 passes last year, still an underclassman, a junior, so there's room to grow and develop. They're going to sign a veteran safety at some point here, but Cross could kind of sit, maybe play in some sort of sub-package role year 1. I think Cross makes a lot of sense in round 3.
And coming from Maryland, Mike Tomlin probably already knows a little more than enough about him at this point. So there's another easy intersection point there when it comes to him. I definitely understand it for sure. And the measurables, as you say, there's some production there. You look at his tape, and and look, kind of regardless of what happens here, the rest of this way, they could use that kind of safety as depth on this team. And even if you get Edmonds back on a 2-year, $8 million deal, it doesn't prevent you from drafting a guy like Nick Cross. I like it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Round 4, pick 138, have the Steelers taking Thayer Munford, the offensive tackle from Ohio State. So offensive tackle, less of a need with Chukwuma Okorafor re-signing, but still want to add some depth there. Okorafor's contract essentially is year-to-year. Joe Haig going into the second year of his 2-year deal. Munford, big size, 35-inch arms, experience, Power 5. A bit similar to the rationale for taking Dan Moore last year. Moore, I think, is a better athlete than what Munford is. But I think Pat Meyer, the new offensive line coach, will like Munford's kind of just size and length and anchor.
Yeah, it's not unthinkable they take, if they were to draft any lineman at this point now in the draft, you would think that it would more than likely be a tackle, right? Because you got Joe Haig. Joe Haig's not a lock to make this roster this year. You no longer have Zach Banner on this roster right now. I mean, you're lacking depth there. And what if Chukwuma Okorafor doesn't work out? He signed a 3-year deal, but you can get out of it after 1 year. So I definitely understand why you went this way. And if indeed they do go an offensive lineman at all, you could see it being a tackle, and you could potentially see the pick being after 3rd round at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this team with all the O-line injuries last year, they know the value and the need of offensive line depth as much as anybody. So having that extra tackle there, I think, is important.
Who do they have behind? Let's see. It goes. It's Haig, and then what is it?
Chaz Green. I mean, you have three. Your top three are more Okorafor and Haig. So I mean, you're okay, but it's like corners and tackles. You always want to have as many of those guys as possible because you can never have no teams like we have too many good tackles on this team. That's never been a sentence uttered by a NFL club ever.
Right.
Round 6, 208 here, going running back with Hassan Haskins. I'll have a report on him. I know, a running back, and it's a late round pick. It's fine. I'll have a report on Haskins probably, I think, tomorrow, actually, on Tuesday. I like this kid. He's a former linebacker, kind of plays like it. He's physical, has some lateral, cut ability. He's not a dynamic or explosive guy, but Pittsburgh likes their backs big. They like him to be workhorse type of guys. He was this past year for the Wolverines. Maybe the best pass protector in this class as well as some of his chips and just pass pro, be able to stand up DBs and keep his eyes up and anchor. Really impressive overall. So there'll be some pushback about, kind of being another big, not explosive Steelers running back, but that is kind of the mold this team likes. And so this one kind of, at least, again, this is my projection of what this team will do, not what I personally would do. And Haskins really, and a Michigan man, feels like a Steeler.
6016228. That matches up with the Alex Kozora, what the Steelers look for, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I haven't done that study yet, but I'm guessing. Now, he didn't test, so he might miss it because of lack of testing. He's had an ankle injury, but had 27 reps on the bench press at the combine. I mean, that kind of shows the strength this guy has and that weight room mentality. So fits his team well.
He's definitely going to get drafted, though, right, Haskins?
Yeah, at least for the special teams value, the third down value, I think, it was just like I wrote in the article, this is probably on the lower end of where he would go. He's kind of viewed as more maybe a fifth, maybe even sneak into the fourth round kind of guy, but running backs, they can kind of get jumbled up a bit here. So I thought I could get away with putting him in the 6th round.
All right.
It's 2 7th-round picks here to round things out at number 225, going cornerback here, Jack Jones from Arizona State, kind of a twitchy, feisty slot corner, had a good combine workout. Not short, but underweight, 5'11", $171. So he's got to get his weight up for sure. But good productivity, good balls, goes 10 career interceptions. Again, more cornerback depth and value, and a guy that will play in the slot, and of course on special teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of him yet. Do you have a game to watch on him that you think sticks out, or how much have you watched of him?
I haven't really gone through a lot of games. I've gone just watching his combine, just going through some of the drills, some of the fluidity, change of direction, coming downhill, and just kind of matching it up with the production and Power 5 play. Just made a lot of sense in the 7th round.
And he's definitely a slot guy?
Yeah, I think $171. That's tough to play on the outside.
All right. I need to watch him.
Yeah. Last pick here, number 241, Keith, the tight end from Minnesota. Just a very classic blocking type of guy. Maybe one of the best blocking tight ends in this class. And that's basically all he did at Minnesota. Had, I think, 12 career receptions at Minnesota, including 7 this past year. So a blocking type first, second, third, but a very good one with good length. And, if you ever lost Zach Gentry, you want to, still have that number 2 tight end who can block for you, and that's going to be important. So it's not a high upside pick, but a very high floor pick in Keith.
How dare you not put Connor Hayward in that spot?
I know. He's still on the others considered. He might forever be on that list of my mock drafts.
All right. I've just watched, I think, just a little bit of Keith out of Minnesota there, but definitely a lower late round or undrafted type kind of guy that give you something as a blocker in on special teams. Yeah,
Pat Meyer at that pro day, I bet he was there to watch for lately, but he probably can respect a tight end who can block. So Jonathan has some good clips of Keith in the article I link in the report on Keith on the blurb and on my article on Steelers Depot.
All right, good stuff. I definitely.
Yeah, where are your mock drafts at?
They're coming. I got so much stuff on the back burner here trying to work with. I will get one out, but I where I stand on Malik Willis right now, so that will probably be my number 1 guy here.
Yeah, I just want to see the rest. I'm just curious to see because have you done one yet this year?
No, not of them yet. I hate doing them. I hate them, but
people want to see
out. I will get one out. We'll discuss
All
it.
right. Any other Steelers news you wanted to talk about here before we move on in today's show? Any other things I'm missing?
Just a loose kind of salary cap update
Okay.
with this team, be based on where I have them at now. And here's the thing: you look at sites. Obviously, people look at over the cap and they think that's up to date, and they look at the NFLPA site and they think that's up to date. They're not, folks, because and it's not really their fault, because a lot of these contracts have not come in yet. And even though you have some loose terms on like the amount of years and the total value, if you don't have the exact breakdown of those contracts, then it's hard for some of these sites to kind of update with them. But knowing the way the Steelers do contracts, and at least having the total values to work with, and those kind of things, you can kind of get a pretty good idea on where they are right now. And specifically, I have this team right around $12 million under the cap right now, and that's through even the Gunner signing, which I believe will be made official by the team later on today here. So that also includes both the terminations of Zach Banner and Joe Schobert. Everything included, I think you're looking at this team right around $12 million under the cap. And you can still do a lot with that cap space. When you look at roster displacement and you look at kind of the players that the Steelers are probably going to be going after, none of which are probably going to have average yearly values greater than $10 million, then you can still do a lot with this thing. You can get a resigning or two or three in there. You can obviously get multiple of those vet benefit contracts in there that we'll probably start seeing at some point. And who knows, for you Tyrann Mathieu fans, or for you Jarvis Landry fans, you can certainly fit one or both of those contracts in there, especially if they're like 2 or 3 year deals in there. So don't be worried about that at all. And more than anything at this point, I can guarantee you this team is going to be doing at least one restructure, maybe two. The big one coming up that we're going to find out, maybe not today, but maybe by Tuesday at 4 o'clock or Wednesday at 5 o'clock at the latest, is Cameron Hayward there. But it'll be a bit surprising if they don't do Cameron Hayward. And then at some point later on in the offseason, you can look at things and decide how much you want to restructure the TJ Watt contract to see how much cap money you have there. But even the $12 million under right now, when you look at what this team has coming down, in the future here, when it comes to 52nd and 53rd player on the roster, practice squad, rookie draft pick pool, $10 million in reserves for in season, they don't have enough. So you got to get that money from somewhere, and that's probably going to come from restructures here. So as I've said, and as we have said for quite a while, don't stress over this team in cap space. They have more than enough room to do whatever they want to do within reason. That's why I say it won't be totally shocking to see this team add another player or two from the outside, in addition to re-signing a couple of their own at this point. So if you want to look at this thing at real time, consider them $12 million under the cap. Going into Monday, essentially, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But they are fine cap wise.
Yeah, good update there. And potentially the reason we haven't heard about the Hayward restructure is just because that contract may not have hit the books officially, or the weekend, or is there any reason maybe we haven't heard about it yet?
Yeah, just it hasn't hit the NFLPA yet. So okay. It's probably getting processed now. It had to, that the I's and the T's and all had to be done by the time he was paid that bonus. But look, I mean, even as of this morning, there are several of these contracts that the Steelers just signed from these outside free agents that have not even hit the NFLPA site. So when you think about too, that look around the league, how these things get there's so much stuff around the league going on that it's probably just created a backload of work in the NFLPA offices that they just got to get them entered into the system.
Right. Gotcha. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that in the coming days. So anything else Steelers wise, or is that, I think that covers it pretty well, Dave?
I think we got most of it right.
All right, let's talk about one piece of AFC North news. And I thought this would be just kind of a footnote to a conversation that we've had, but it certainly has become a bigger story and will be a bigger story. Deshaun Watson has made his decision and he's heading to the AFC North, but not the Pittsburgh Steelers, doubling back and deciding to waive his no trade clause for the Cleveland Browns, and 230 million guaranteed. It's a good incentive to change your mind. And so that is the contract handed out by the Browns. Was it 5 years, 230 million, fully guaranteed, largest contract, fully guaranteed by a mile in football history. So Deshaun Watson, welcome to the Cleveland Browns. That is a stunner of a move.
I tell you, and they were supposedly out of it, then back in, and not surprising to see his contract rearranged, because now, obviously he's probably expecting some sort of suspension, and now there's only limited amount of money that he can lose to games lost in this thing should he be suspended. And I think it goes without saying the pushback from the fan base. And, we talk about one of the things about when we're talking about the plausibility aspect versus the probability aspect of the Steelers getting involved in a guy like Watson. You're seeing it with the Browns, and that's quite the PR stuff that they're going to have to be busy doing for at least the next year, when it comes to that kind of stuff. There's going to be a huge amount of pushback from the fan base and the media and the general public overall, but that's their guy. They redid they're married to him now. They give up quite the haul overall for him. Boy, you look at the picks and it ended up being kind of what was laid out there. I kind of wondered if they would be able to get the haul that was out there, but they damn sure did, and probably a little bit more on top of it there. So that's the Browns quarterback now at this point.
Yeah, and it just kind of heightens the thought, and this was already a thought that existed prior to Watson's decision, but about just how competitive the AFC is and how many great quarterbacks are in the NFL, but specifically in the AFC. And now you're in your AFC North, you're facing Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and post-suspension, Deshaun Watson twice a year for the next 5-10 years. And so you got to find a quarterback that can match that. And so name of the game is always quarterback. It's not the say-all end-all. It does not guarantee you success, but a lack of a franchise quarterback to me overall kind of guarantees your failure in terms of being a Super Bowl true contender. And so that's Pittsburgh's mission and why you have to really be as aggressive as possible in trying to address that position.
Look, I mean, it's the values have changed in the AFC North now, right? I mean, Baker, Deshaun's a great quarterback, plain and simple. And you look at Joe Burrow and his maturation in his second year, and then, Lamar Jackson's Lamar Jackson. He's going to be tough when you play him, and that's going to guarantee that the Ravens are in some games, regardless of how they look on the defensive side of football here. And then you got the Steelers with one of these things.
Yeah, it's the knife to a gunfight.
Sesame Street here, and I understand why the Steelers went the way that they did with Mitch Trubisky. I mean, it matches up, as we mentioned several times since the signing, of why they went the way that they did. But odds are it's not going to be enough.
Sure. Yeah.
Unless the Steelers defense in 2020, has to play absolutely lights out. They're going to have stellar special. So many things have got to go right for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2022 just to compete in the AFC North alone. And if you don't win 4 games in the AFC North, you're probably not in this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Plain and simple. And that's got to be your thought process with the Steelers moving forward right now, is we have got to do enough to compete to win at least 4 games in the AFC North and then go forward from there. And I'm not convinced, even with and look, hats off, that they are doing everything, outside of adding a franchise, the stellar franchise quarterback. They're doing everything they can to try to keep up with this, but it's still, we'll see how the defense plays. It doesn't feel like it's enough.
Mm-hmm. I don't begrudge this team for adding a veteran quarterback like Trubisky because I'm sure they recognize that like he's not being signed as a one-to-one battle against Burrow or Jackson or Mahomes
Right.
or Josh Allen. I mean, obviously that's not the case. So the vision and the need for the long-term franchise quarterback is still there. Pittsburgh's plan of playing great defense in 2022 and a good run game is probably their best shot at competing because they're not that quarterback to change the franchise was not coming through the door. So I'm not mad at their mentality this year, but certainly the long-term plan has to be something beyond that, finding that franchise guy. And it's hard to do, and there are no guarantees, and the draft is art, not science. And I get all of those things, but that is the name of the game is you got to find that high-level quarterback to compete with the other now 10 or so high-level quarterbacks in the AFC. You know, Watson stays in the AFC. Wilson comes over. All the quarterbacks who are already there, whatever young guys end up developing, you know, Tua, Wilson, Lawrence, etc. One of those guys will hit in a big way. So that's the goal, and it hasn't changed post Watson, but it just heightens the need and the realization and the reality of it all the more.
And as I said in the terrible take, sometime last week there, you got to surround Mitch Trubisky with several aspects to make sure you maximize what he can bring to your team. You got to have a great running game. The only way you're going to have a great running game is getting that offensive line better. They made the attempt at that. And on the flip side, a great defense, surely helps your offense. And they appear to be trying to make strides, obviously on that side of the ball as well. It's, so many things have got to go right with this team for them to be able to compete in 2022. And right now it still feels like it's short, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, it is. And I think, again, Pittsburgh, I'm sure, recognizes that, but that is just going to be your mission. And let's just not be breaking any news here that people already didn't know. Like, you have to have a franchise quarterback to win and compete in football. I mean, that's not totally groundbreaking information there, but it's just a reminder how important that is. And Pittsburgh is not in that camp right now. And that's okay to say.
Yeah, people won't think it's okay to say, but I think it's the truth.
It is. So Watson, and the last thing I'll say on Watson is I know it's a little bit of the national media carrying water here about, oh, Watson changed his mind because he realized the Browns were the best roster. Listen, he knew what the Browns roster was when he eliminated them, the day or two before he changed his mind. And the roster did not change over that time. The reason why he changed his mind is because the Browns offered him a blank check and said, I'll give you $230 million fully guaranteed. That's why he changed his mind. Right. So anyone who told you it's about the roster is just covering basically for an insane contract given out to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and they protected all of his money too.
Yeah, fully guaranteed.
And especially the aspect of protecting it against suspension as well. And then they turn around and they got your guy Jacoby Brissett, Alex. Added him, and it's understandable. That's what they did with moving Case Keenum out is getting that quarterback room out of there completely, except for Nick Mullins. But I mean, how long has Nick Mullins really been there overall?
I think Keenum was owed some money as well, so it's probably a financial component to it as well, I'm guessing.
Okay, and help make that cap numbers work and all like that, because I think they moved that out, and I think the team that he went to ended up restructuring Case Keenum's contract on
Buffalo, because that's Trubisky's replacement, and right. Buffalo's Keenum.
So now you have a guy in Brissett that kind of gives you a comparable, at least you probably can still run the same offense that you have in store for Watson with Brissett, right?
I mean,
to a degree.
To a degree. I mean, they'll make it work, I guess. I think they're fairly different quarterbacks, but I'm just hoping for an early meeting against the Browns. Hoping something within the first month of the 2022 is kind of my hope there.
Right.
But it's a guy you're facing for 10 years, so it really doesn't matter. You're facing this guy for a long, long time.
Right. So, and you start adding all this up together. That's another reason to think this Steelers team's going to draft not just a quarterback, but Malik Willis in the first round. It's going to take a lot to get me off that mark, Alex. And I've been on that mark for a little while now. It's going to take a lot to get me off the mark of thinking that the Steelers, are not going to draft Malik Willis.
Sure. Let me pose this hypothetical, even though we both believe it's probably highly unlikely. If Tomlin and Colbert are not at Liberty's pro day tomorrow, is that enough to get you off the Malik Willis train?
I will certainly look at it because I can't imagine them drafting a quarterback by not going to that pro day.
I'm with you, but I think we both expect him to be there, but it'll be interesting. I'm expecting that box to be checked, but I'm not going to check it yet.
If he's not there, then the line of excuses would probably be like Jake Elwood begging for forgiveness from Carrie Fisher in the movie The Blues Brothers. An old friend came in from out of town. There was a fire, a terrible earthquake, locusts. I swear to God, it wasn't my fault. It's that kind of multiple things happen. My tux didn't come back from the cleaners. That kind of long diatribe is kind of the excuses that Mike Tomlin was having to deal with by not making it to the Liberty Pro Day. That's the way I envision it. A lot of people got that reference. Yeah. You obviously did. It's a classic scene in the Blues Brothers.
That is for our older demographic of Steelers
there
Depot, not for the younger crowd. I'm glad I can still feel young though at heart. Thank you, Dave, for preserving that for me. Anything else you want to talk about here before we move on in today's show?
We didn't miss anything, right? What about other around the NFL news? The Bengals get La'el Collins, right?
Yeah, that's a big signing there to play right tackle. So the Bengals certainly recognizing, though it was obvious, the need to improve their offensive line. They've done that with Alex Campa and Ted Karras and now La'el Collins. And I'm sure they'll probably address it more in the draft as well. So the Bengals certainly fixing their biggest weakness by far.
Here's a complete quote. I ran out of gas. I had a flat tire. I didn't have enough money for cab fare. My tux didn't come back from the cleaners. An old friend came in from out of town. Someone stole my car. There was an earthquake, a terrible flood, locust. It wasn't my fault. I swear to God. You got to see that
and
scene.
What's the context here that his
he's
girl's mad at him?
Yeah. His ex-wife is mad at him. She's got a machine gun pointed at him. As Carrie Fisher plays that role, and he's on his knees and he's basically begging for forgiveness from her. It's a classic scene in the Blues Brothers. But
I will add
that's the only way that Mike Tomlin's not at that Liberty Pro Day.
All right. Well, we'll check the locust forecast and see what's going on tomorrow at Liberty. Did you see the latest Urban Meyer news that reportedly he didn't know who Aaron Donald was? Do you believe that? Even for me, I have a hard time believing that. And listen, I know Meyer was a terrible coach and a terrible hire, but is that really true?
I don't know with that guy. I don't know.
That's true.
I don't know.
The fact you have to question it probably speaks
from?
volumes. The Athletic, or a deep dive from the Athletic today.
And it said that he didn't. What context is it?
I don't have the exact quote, but basically saying that number 99 for the Rams, he's a problem. You guys know about this guy? He's apparently a really good player, something to that effect of knowing he was a good player, but not realizing that everyone else was it's Aaron Donald.
Okay. I find it hard to believe, but I don't know when it comes to him. I told everybody that was going to be a bad hire from the Jaguars right from the start.
Yeah, it was somehow worse than bad. It was just an all-time bad hire by an NFL franchise. Dave, I want to get to reader emails here and close out today's show, but I do want to mention first some very sad news came across this weekend, the passing of John Clayton after apparently a brief illness, according to, I think, the obituary. Steelers fans, Pittsburgh fans know Clayton very well. Grew up in Pittsburgh in terms of reporting on the beat there very early in the 80s and 90s, and has always been a Pittsburgh presence, although he's kind of covered the West Coast and Seattle more in recent years. But a guy that, frankly, Dave, whenever I was a kid growing up watching a ton of Sports Center, ESPN, that I looked up to, because on TV it was all the former NFL players, all the Emmitt Smiths and Sean Salisbury's, and just the guys who look like NFL players. And John Clayton looked like me as kind of the scrawny, awkward looking kid growing up, and kind of gave me some hope in that sense of it. And so, that's a guy that I've always certainly looked up to and respected, and just, was a reporter for, 50 plus years or something like that. Just a remarkable career. And so a very, very sad day. And it was just heartening to see all the very, various stories, shared on Twitter by people that knew Clayton personally about his kindness and thoughtfulness and just overall generosity and willing to help out people breaking into that sports reporting world. And so that's just some very sad news there, Dave.
And I think also from the personal side, I think his wife has MS, and he's been kind of the caregiver for his wife for multiple years. With her battle on that, I think he's been real active in promoting MS and the disability and fundraising for that end of it. He obviously got his start way back with the Pittsburgh Press, the old Pittsburgh Press there, and a lot of people don't realize that back in the late 70s there, he was the one that kind of, he broke the story on shoulder pad gate, there. And a lot of people wonder what kind of pushback at the time there would be from Chuck Noll and just people in general overall by him. Blowing the it was a CBA violation. Obviously, the Steelers were practicing in pads when they shouldn't. I think it ended up costing the Steelers something like $38,000 fine, which back then, $38,000, you look at it now, you think, that's nothing. But back then, that obviously was something big. And, he was the one that kind of blew the lid off that story. And I think he was not even full time with the Pittsburgh Press at the time. What was that, 77, 78 along in there? And obviously went on to have a career at in Pittsburgh in the papers, and off to the Northwest. He went into Seattle for numerous years. And you think about in what, the 90s or whatnot, and ESPN. He was Adam Schefter before there was an Adam Schefter. He was the guy that is this guy playing on Sunday? You would always tune in to John Clayton's kind of reports there on that. And I think at first he did not really embrace the fantasy football aspect of people viewing him as the guy that got them to set their fantasy lineups right in so many words. But I think he went on to kind of embrace that. And, you just read a lot of the stories around the league, and I've read quite a few of them in the papers here these last couple of days, that people that worked with him and all like that, what a hard work. And he had, 2-3 sources in, every team and all. Obviously his later days, here on the radio, weren't spectacular when it came to making good predictions and all like that. Kind of had a lot of fun at his expense, but overall just a good guy, a great guy overall to read some of this stuff, and definitely a pioneer in the business when it came to the NFL. He ate, slept, and every aspect of the NFL. And once again, there was a period of, 5-6 years, whatever it was, where that he was the Adam Schefter of the NFL. And everybody, if you're old enough to remember this is Sports Center commercial with the Slayer shirt, the ponytail, and Mama, I'm finished with my segment, kind of in there. That was iconic at the time there. And so, I think kind of went into the hospital there the last couple of weeks, kind of, and evidently had been battling something, I don't know what, and then really went downhill quickly. So rest in peace, John Clayton. Definitely you can't have NFL media history without John Clayton.
Right. Well said, Dave. And so John Clayton will be missed. All right, we'll close out today's show with some reader emails, Dave.
All right, let's get to some reader emails.
And just a reminder, we'll have our live stream tonight, Dave and I, on YouTube, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to hang out with Dave, ask us some questions that we haven't addressed here on the podcast, feel free to do so this evening.
Jalen Brown writes in, I'll try to be concise here. Is there anything specific to take away from some of the 2-year deals recent free agents have signed? Does it indicate the team thinks Super Bowl window is that open? The players aren't viewed as long-term options. Also, where do you rank the team's list of needs at this point heading into the draft now that the majority of the key signings have concluded? Look, the 2-year deals, a lot of these, give players with depressed market values your Miles Jack. Oh man, who else has signed some 2-year deals here? Alex, Montravius Adams.
Levi Wallace is a 2-year deal.
Levi Wallace.
Akella's a 2-year deal.
Right. Mitch Trubisky's obviously a two-year deal. I will say this as a broad brush kind of stroke here on the Steelers offseason as a whole. There has been nothing surprising as far as contract and deals go with the way the Steelers have done things here. And that boils down to structure, signing bonus. None of it has been surprising whatsoever. With some of these kind of it gives these players an opportunity to get 2 years in and then get back out on the market and try to improve their value. So 2 to 3 year deals with what the Steelers are majority of what they're doing this year is not uncommon at all. So don't read anything into that whatsoever. And they're hole fillers on top of it too. A lot of these signings are not going to prevent the Steelers from addressing some of these positions in the draft. And that carries into your next question. Team needs, in quotation points, at this point heading into the draft, Alex.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think the 2-year deal is kind of the sweet spot for player and team. The 3-year deal might be too long for some of these players because it might not be enough, their average yearly value might be too low for them to want to be locked in for 3 years. But the 1-year deal is tough as well because you can't spread out that cap hit if it's just a 1-year contract. And so I think 2 years kind of allows you to have some flexibility. You'll test it in a couple of years for the player, but also get a little bit of security. And for the team, it's avoiding that 1-year deal where you really can't do anything with the money. It has to be just all absorbed in that first year.
And look, Tacoma Core, if things don't go well, you can part ways with them. Mason Cole is another one. If things don't go well, you cut him after 1 year, kind of things there. And really kind of same with the two cornerbacks in Witherspoon and Levi Wallace as well too. So these are all kind of can essentially be framed as 1-year deals if you want to get specific about it.
Yeah, the good thing for the Steelers, while they're handing out a lot bigger contracts than what we're used to, they're not anything like where they're so tied down to any one guy that they can't get out of a contract within a year or two. Like they're all pretty reasonable deals that are shorter term than longer term. James Daniels is the biggest one, but even that one's not like it's $70 million. It's under $30 million, I think. So, I think that the Steelers have done a good job of they're being aggressive, but they're not being stupid about how they spend their money in free agency.
All right. Team needs at this point. Safety's obviously one of them. We'll see if they can fill that. Outside linebacker. They got to do something to get some depth on this roster at outside linebacker. You didn't have an edge on your mock draft, did you?
I did not, but then this is the subject of my terrible take today about the underrated need to add an edge guy. I think it'll be a more veteran guy, kind of like what they wanted from Melvin Ingram last year. Edge certainly can be considered in the draft and should be maybe more than what I gave it. I was just trying to find what edge guy kind of fit best and had some issue there from the draft pool. But yeah, I think this team needs to add at least re-sign Taco because right now he's not even under contract. But I think you want to look for a more veteran guy and maybe even someone older than 30, which I know is generally not what they do. But last year they signed Ingram, they looked at Kerrigan, they looked at Merciless, so maybe they're willing to make an exception at that position for a guy that's on the other side of 30.
You want to just go back and get my terrible take from about this, not too terribly long after this same time last year. I was hollering because we were looking at the marshes and the and I think that's obviously before Taco, right? And we were kind of looking at that outside linebacker depth chart and saying, man, this team needs to add some outside linebackers. And obviously did, and the guy in Melvin Ingram, and we all know how that worked out. And what you're telling me is Derek Tuska's not that guy, right? And
not
Taco's
really.
Not really that guy.
Yeah, I mean, Tuska's got the special teams value, and he did have a big sack against the Titans last year, but I think you're looking for more than Derek Tuska.
Safety, outside linebacker. You can make an argument that tackle, Alex addressed it in his mock draft.
Slot receiver, obviously.
Slot receiver, obviously. Big time at this point right now. I think this is still good. Jalen, I think this is still going to be a little bit fluid here. Give him another couple weeks. I think we might look at this just a little bit different here because I don't think they're done, quote unquote, filling holes, if you will. Not that those will overly impact the draft. They could, but they might not. But as Alex and I have said throughout this process here, I think we're going to learn a lot about this team in the coming weeks here. And we already know about half of it. I think we're about to see the other half of it.
Yeah, agreed. They're going to make some more moves here for sure. And of course, the biggest one of all, quarterback, the long-term fixture for this team, not on the roster. They got the short-term bridge guys, which is all well and good, but still that looming cloud over the franchise is who is going to be the long-term face of this franchise.
Garrett Goldberg writes in quarterback pro days. Hey guys, so the perceived top 4 quarterbacks have pro days back to back this week. Pickett Monday, Willis Tuesday, Corral Wednesday, and Ritter Thursday. Not sure when Howell's pro day is, but do you guys think Colbert and Tomlin will be at every quarterback pro day this year? And if not, do you think that eliminates the team from selecting a quarterback whose pro day they did not visit? Thanks, love the show. I'll tell you what. If they don't go to Corrals, he's out. I'll almost guarantee you that, because him being a little bit younger in his process and not at the Senior Bowl, right? And those kind of things there. But even so, Garrett, just the history and such an important position this is, and turning point in the franchise. I will be shocked if they're not at any of these pro days. And then the pro day that they're not at, yeah, I think you can eliminate that guy. But I think this stacks up to be a Tomlin, Colbert, quarterback pro day week.
Mm-hmm. Unless there are locusts and floods, in which case
exactly.
we may have to consider. No, I agree.
Terrible fires.
Terrible fires. No, I agree. I mean, the history for any position for Tomlin, Colbert, being at their pro day for a first-round pick is extremely strong. And when you're talking about franchise quarterback, even for a guy like Kenny Pickett, a guy that probably better than any other NFL team, you want to get every exposure to him as possible. And that's why they're at Pitt's pro day today, where they usually do not go. They usually actually do not attend Pitt's pro day because they probably know those guys already pretty well, before the draft process even begins. But that if you're not at that pro day for your most important position, the most important pick you're going to make for the next 5-10 years, then that's pretty telling to me. So I think it's almost a must that those guys need to be there. I expect that they will be there for Liberty tomorrow, for Pitt today, for one or two at least of these other pro days. And I believe North Carolina is 1 week from today. March 28th is what I'm seeing here on PFF. So March 28th for North Carolina.
Seth writes in, I'm confused by JuJu's situation. We've seen him make so many big plays downfield early in his career. I'm no X's and O's expert, but my eyes tell me this whole low average, short yardage thing is completely a function of the offense and what he was asked to do. Do the Steelers really believe that that's all he's capable of after everything he achieved in his first 3 years in the league? How have his early years not earned him the benefit of the doubt in a bigger deal from a team who has asked their entire offense to shrink to suit an aging quarterback and bad O-line? I'm genuinely confused. Look, I think you got part of it there. I don't think that they doubt his overall ability, but let's not kid ourselves on top of it. JuJu's not going to be a guy that you're going to line up on the Z that's going to continually blow past people that way there. Quite honestly, his best position in the NFL is a big slot. Would you agree, Alex?
No, 100%. I mean, that's where he's made most of his, hay in the NFL.
All right, and that big slot, yeah, did the Steelers offense not utilize him to maximize his abilities in these last couple of years? I would agree wholeheartedly with that. And Alex, you probably would as well too. But an aging quarterback trying to get the football out of his hands quick, a kind of limited offensive scheme, if you will, all that kind of created the perfect storm with JuJu too, where JuJu just became a third down, throw it 5 yards past the line of scrimmage to JuJu, and let's see if he can get the first down.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it became. But it was frustrating to see him reduced to such a short, shallow route tree whenever this is a guy who had 2 97-yard touchdowns his first 2 years in the NFL. So it was still a bit confusing why they just so refused to try to use him downfield really at all, not even just like occasionally,
right.
Like just so rare. But I mean, he became that security blanket, that quick option, that third down leverage route, read the coverage, make a break and make the catch kind of a guy. And that's just kind of the role that he did well in. But Here does market value when you're averaging 8.5 yards per catch. You're not going to get paid a lot of money for making those 5-yard catches in the NFL.
Absolutely. And look, I think the Steelers still thought he had value to some degree. I just obviously don't think they thought it was $10 million per year value. But Seth, I if you go back and obviously you made it this far in the podcast, if you listen to this, I think what happened with JuJu this offseason is the way I laid it out is pretty damn close to probably what actually happened there. And like it or not, him missing that time last year hurt his value. There's been talk about his knee and how often, is his knee chronic and kind of thing that just is going to hurt him moving forward. I don't know about that aspect of it there, but his market value was depressed. The Steelers weren't going to do a 1-year deal with him. He didn't want to do a multi-year with the Steelers, and the Chiefs gave him an opportunity to earn up to $10.75 million. So JuJu looks at this as an opportunity to make him some money and rebuild his market value in the process. And long story short, that's why he's in Kansas City now.
Yep, I 100% agree with that, Dave.
Let's see here. Travis, let's see. I think we got most of them here now. Yeah, I think we got all of them here. So that's got us caught up here, for at least from what I can see here, Alex. So you and I be back on Wednesday. Who knows what we'll be discussing then? Who knows? Maybe I'll have my first mock draft out at that time for us, for Alex and I to discuss there. The pro days we'll be tracking here over this course of this week, specifically the quarterback ones. Just so much going on right now. And thank you to everybody who's been to the site recently. Just a tremendous record week for Steelers Depot, to open up free agency here. So we appreciate that as well too. Alex and I once again will be on the YouTube live stream later on this Monday night. So make sure you check Alex's YouTube feed, and we would like to have you watch that with us later on this evening and ask any questions you might have as well too. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com. If you like an ad-free version, hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar as well. So until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.